There is a peculiar thing about the way we live. We move through the world as if we are guarding something terribly fragile, as if inside us sits a small emperor, perched on a throne of expectations, terrified that someone might discover he is not actually in control of anything at all. This anxious little sovereign is what we call the ego. And the ego, bless its heart, is fighting every waking moment to preserve a life it can never truly keep. Let me begin with a simple image. Imagine you are standing on the seashore and you scoop up a handful of water. You tighten your grip, determined to hold it, to keep it from slipping away. But the tighter you grasp, the faster it runs through your fingers. Yet if you gently cup your hand without clinging, the water stays. Life is very much like that. Hold too tightly and it escapes you. Hold gently and it remains. The ego does not understand this. It believes that survival depends on clenching, resisting, clinging, defending. It whispers constantly that you must keep your storyline intact, your identity sharp, your borders fortified. It says that your worth lives in the things you possess, the opinions you defend, the roles you play, the mask you polish. But the mask is not you. It is simply a costume worn for a time in this great play. Now, the curious thing is that the ego's fear is not entirely foolish. It senses, quite accurately, that everything it identifies with will one day fade. It knows that its story has an ending. It knows that even the body it claims as its home is only rented for a brief stay. And so it fights. Not because it is evil, but because it is afraid. Afraid of vanishing, afraid of being no one. Afraid of dissolving back into the vastness from which it emerged. But here is the paradox. The ego is fighting to preserve an illusion. A character, not a being. A name, not a soul. A story, not the storyteller. You see, you do not have a life. You are life. You are the very movement, the dance, the unfolding of existence itself. What you call your ego is simply a wave convinced it is separate from the ocean. Picture a wave rising on the surface of the sea. It believes that it must maintain its shape. It fears the moment it will fall back, flatten out, lose itself. It forgets that even as it rises, and even as it falls, it has never been anything other than the ocean all along. We live in this same misunderstanding. We imagine ourselves as isolated points of consciousness, singular and solitary. Yet in reality, you are the universe expressing itself for a little while as the person you call yourself. When the ego hears this, it becomes uneasy. Because if you are not the name, not the form, not the story, then what is there left to defend? What is there left to cling to? What is there left to fear? Losing. And the answer, of course, is nothing. Which is precisely what frightens the ego. But it is also the doorway to liberation. You see, the ego thrives on boundaries. It needs walls to feel safe. It needs separation to feel solid. It needs control to feel real. But control is a fantasy. You cannot control the beating of your heart, the thoughts that arise, the feelings that pass, the changes that come, the people who leave, the aging of the body, the turning of the seasons. Life is happening, and you are part of its happening, not the commander of it. The ego imagines itself as a captain steering the ship of life, but you are the sea. The captain is a temporary figure, a useful fiction, a storyteller who helps you navigate the human realm. Yet the true depth of what you are exists far beneath the surface, where no storm can ever reach. If you listen closely, beneath all the ego's noise, you can feel a quiet presence, a stillness that is untouched by praise or blame, success or failure, winning or losing. A presence that does not arise or vanish. A presence that does not fight. It simply is, and this presence is what the ego is searching for, even as it resists it. Because the ego longs for lasting peace, but it looks for it in impermanent things. It seeks security in a world that is always dissolving. It seeks eternity in what is temporary. It seeks certainty in a universe that dances in uncertainty. So it struggles, it clings, it fights for a life it cannot keep.
But you, the deeper you, do not need to fight, because you are not going anywhere. What you truly are cannot be gained or lost, expanded or diminished, born or extinguished. It is the same presence you knew as a child, the same presence that watches thoughts and feelings come and go like clouds across a wide sky.
The ego is the cloud. You are the sky. When you see this clearly, something extraordinary happens. The urgency begins to fade. The tightness around your identity begins to loosen. You no longer feel compelled to win every argument, to prove your worth, to defend your image, to secure your permanence in a world that has never promised permanence to anyone. You begin to breathe again. You begin to live again. But notice what happens next. The ego does not disappear quietly. It resists. It whispers that without its constant vigilance, you will be unsafe. That without its endless commentary, you will be lost. That without its tension, you will fall apart. Yet this is simply fear trying to protect itself. It is the leaf trembling, because it does not realize it is part of the tree. Let us look deeper into this fear. At the heart of the ego's struggle is the belief that life is something happening to you, rather than happening as you. The ego feels like a fragile guest in a vast, unpredictable world. It believes it must always be on guard, always be improving, always be comparing, always be controlling. And so it becomes a worrier, a planner, a critic, a judge. It builds an entire fortress of thought, all in the service of maintaining an identity that is ultimately just a temporary wave on the surface of existence. But once you recognize the illusion, you can step back and smile at its efforts. You can treat the ego not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a part of yourself that simply misunderstood the game. Because life is not a battle. It is a dance. You do not conquer it, you participate in it. Imagine again that wave rising on the ocean. Its beauty is not in its permanence. Its beauty is in its movement. In its shape appearing, shimmering, dissolving and returning.
And your life is exactly like that. It is not meaningful because it lasts forever. It is meaningful because it is alive. Because it is happening right now. Because it is unique, unrepeatable and fleeting.
The ego calls this fragility, but the heart calls it wonder. There is a moment, a very quiet moment, when you stop trying to force life into your expectations and you simply let it unfold. This is the beginning of freedom. Not the freedom that comes from gaining control, but the freedom that comes from relinquishing it. You begin to trust the very thing you once feared. You begin to rest in the flow, rather than bracing against it. You begin to see that the same life which grows trees and moves clouds and shapes galaxies is the life that breathes you. And suddenly the burden lifts. Now let us return to the paradox at the heart of this talk. The ego fights for a life it cannot keep. It tightens its grip on everything that is slipping away. But here is the irony. When you stop clinging, you do not lose life. You gain it. You gain the whole thing, not as something possessed, but as something participated in. Not as something you own, but as something you are. Have you noticed that the greatest moments of your life were the ones in which you forgot yourself. Moments of laughter, moments of love, moments of awe, moments when the boundary between you and the world dissolved, and you were simply present without commentary, without fear, without effort. In those moments, the ego stepped aside, and life flowed through unimpeded. This is the secret. Not to destroy the ego, but to see through it. To let it be the useful servant it was meant to be, rather than the frantic master it tries to become. When you see through the ego's illusion, you do not become less human. You become more human. You become softer, more open, more alive, more willing to let things come and go, as all things do. You understand that love cannot be clung to, only given. That joy cannot be captured, only experienced. That peace cannot be forced, only allowed. That life cannot be possessed, only lived. And so you live with a kind of lightness, because you are no longer trying to carry what was never yours. You live with a kind of courage, because you realize there is nothing to defend. You live with a kind of serenity, because you are no longer at war with change. The ego may still whisper now and then that you must fight to keep hold of your life. But the deeper part of you smiles gently, knowing the truth. You cannot keep what was never separate from you. You cannot lose what you fundamentally are. You are the ocean, not the wave. The sky, not the cloud. The presence underlying every thought, every feeling, every breath. This realization is not a thought, but a seeing. A quiet awakening. A softening into what has always been true. And when you finally rest in this truth, you discover that nothing was ever missing. Life was never meant to be gripped. It was meant to be danced. So, dance. Let go. Flow with the rhythm of the moment. And watch how the world unfolds when you stop trying to hold it still.